Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my June reading wrap-up. In the month of June I read 13 books and I'm here to tell you all my thoughts and feelings, and in the description box down below I'll have all the content warnings for all of the books I read, so definitely check out that description box if you would like some warnings, and without further ado let's get right down to the books. But the very first book I want to talk about and get right out of the way is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a very popular book on BookTube, and we follow Jude, who is a disabled protagonist, and he has three really good best friends, and it's about his best friends trying their best to look after Jude despite not knowing his history and his past, and that is all the synopsis tells you, so that is all I am going to be telling you. But unfortunately this was a 1 star for me. I really did not like this book, and the worst thing ever is that I predicted that I would give this book 5 stars, so it was a major disappointment for me. I've already mentioned in my unhaul that I'm going to be unhauling this and getting it off of my shelves, but to give you some spoiler-free reasons of why I did not like this book is that I found it to be incredibly ableist. As far as I can tell, the author is able-bodied, and in this story Jude just really hates his body. He hates the limits of his body, and the way that he talks about and thinks about his disability all the way through this book, and then also with what happens in this book, I just feel like it's a very good example of another able-bodied author just telling us this certain type of disabled narrative that just feels so... Do they really think that disabled people feel this way about themselves all of the time? And I know that Jude is a very unique character because he has other things going on, but even then I have to say the layering of this story felt very much like trauma porn, just because it was layered and layered and layered with depressing and sad occurrences in his life. And I do think if this was told in a non-fiction where everything was true, and this was not by this author but by someone who actually had those experiences told to them, I would feel utterly devastated. But because this is fiction where it's a story where we know it's not true, it just felt like far too much in a single narrative, too many unfortunate occasions, too much suffering and pain. I became desensitized to it, and I think that's a case of trauma porn where bad things just happen one after the other with no or little relief. It does feel like it's only going to be trauma porn and nothing else. So I struggled with that. I thought the writing was okay. I did expect the story to have more of a focus on the friendship. It did not have as much of a focus on the friendships as I would have wanted, or at least not the group found family feel of friendship. There was one friendship that was definitely the dominant one, and it followed that all the way through, but I wanted to see more of the group friendship dynamic. I feel like there are characters here that were shed in a positive light that were not as competent or as great as the author wanted us to believe that they were. For example, there are certain characters who I started off liking in the beginning, Willem, Harold, Andy, but as things went along I became very disappointed in their characters and what they did and didn't do. I thought the ending was rubbish. I hate this kind of ending for this kind of narrative, and it was just very disappointing to see happen all over again, and there are many different reasons why I didn't like this one, but I definitely need to go into specifics, so please wait. I think somewhere in July I'm going to be ready to give you my rant review, just doing a little bit more research on Own Voices reviews and also on the author interviews, because I'm very much interested in hearing what the author has to say. But it's coming for you, and this was not the book for me. 1 star. However, I do want to say thank you so much to Serena from A Wandering Mind for buddy reading this one with me. I would not have gotten all the way through it if it weren't for you, and hopefully we can pick a more enjoyable book to buddy read together next time. We're going to change the tune here. The next book that I finished reading was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and this one is a high epic fantasy and it's absolutely fantastic. I rated this one 5 stars. It's a new favourite for me, but it's also like a new favourite fantasy book of all time because everything that BookTube has been saying and raving about this book is absolutely true. So in this one we follow these different characters, and they exist in a world where orogeny exists, and orogeny is this ability to manipulate earth, so they can create earthquakes and shakes in the earth, and they can do various things with their gift. But you would think that these people would have the power in the society and world that they live in, but unfortunately they do not. They are controlled by this group called the Fulcrum and Guardians, and they follow different characters in this world as another season is approaching. I know a lot of people say that the beginning of this book, or this book in general, is very confusing, but I do think the author does a very good job of giving us information in pieces, so we get everything that we need to know and we get there in time and it doesn't feel too overwhelming. I will say say that the prologue is definitely confusing, and I'd recommend just reading it and forgetting about it and acting like chapter 1 is where everything really starts to make more concrete sense. People have mentioned being worried about the second person perspective in this. Don't be worried about it. I've read other second person perspective and none of them felt as natural as this one. I completely forgot that I was even reading second person perspective. I loved so many of the characters in this one. Two characters that were definitely my favourites were Alabaster and Hoa, but all of them were just incredibly well developed, and this author does something very special with character layering, which makes these characters come to life all the more, and I absolutely adored reading that. At times in this book I was wondering how it was all going to come together because everything feels very spread out and separate with the points of view, but just wait for it. It does come together in a very satisfying way and it was absolutely fantastic. The world building is just so different from any fantasy book that I've read. I can't really compare it on a world building level. This world is certainly unique and it works. There's a reason why this one has won so many awards, this whole series, and I think it very much shows when you read this book. We've got some very good representation in here. Of course we've got black characters, but we've also got trans rep, we've got polyamorous rep, we've got gay characters. It's just got all of it very casually interwoven in there. It was absolutely fantastic. You need your brain switched on for this, but it's worth every single page. Thank you so much to Jade and Soleil for starting off this buddy read with me. I was a little bit slow and fell off the wagon there, but it was very nice to discuss the first half of this book with you. I cannot wait to get my hands on the sequel because this was so fantastic. I had a lot of 5 stars this month, which makes up for my 1 star because the next book I'm going to talk about is Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman, and I absolutely love this. New favourite, 5 stars, and I even liked it more than the first book. So in this book we're following Charlie and Nick, and the first synopsis for the first book is boy meets boy, boy has crush on boy, and that's kind of where the story goes. It's just 2 British boys in secondary school developing feelings for each other. It's black and white art, it's straightforward, it's a simple story, but it's absolutely the most heartwarming thing. When I was reading this book, I really thought my heart was going to explode from happiness because it was just so adorable, so cute, especially as these boys are figuring things out. And one boy in particular is questioning his identity and just really trying to work through his thoughts and work through his feelings on that matter and navigate how he is a very different person from how he used to be now that he's discovering these things about himself. And I thought it handled that very well. It was just a joy to read, especially during Pride Month, and I feel like this is a booktube darling again. Everybody knows about it, but it's definitely worth your time. You can read it online as well if you want to. I finally got to reading Mr. Impossible by Maggie Stiefvater. I predicted I would give this one 5 stars, and guess what? Your girl gave it 5 stars. I loved this book, and I'm so happy that I loved it because I have to admit Call Down the Hawk was just an okay read, but this one, it brought it to the table. So the Dreamer trilogy follows Ronan Lynch, who you meet in the original Raven Cycle book, and it's about dreamers. Not gonna say anything else because I'm trying not to give away not only the plot for book 1, but I'm also trying not to give away the plot for series 1, which is the whole of the Raven Cycle. So what I can tell you is that I absolutely adored this book. I think in this one Stiefvater's writing style is back on track for being lyrical and beautiful and captivating images just so very well. I was very invested in the characters and I feel like the storyline in this one takes off a lot more than in the first book. The first book really felt like a prologue, but here we've got a plot down to pat and you can feel the suspense and that it's building up to something concrete. I do think that in this one certain characters stole the show from the main plot line, so I would say that Declan, Jordan and also Matthew were characters I was really invested in, even more so than Ronan and Hennessy, who are getting their main storyline, who are the main characters that we're following. And I really liked Hennessy's character in this one. In the first book I did not like Hennessy at all, but I will say that she's had a bit of a character change. Her personality has really gone through a big change in this book and it's significant from the first book, but I still think it's a good thing that Stiefvater decided to switch it this way. So while it does lack a bit in consistency from the first book, the way her character is now, it's still connected enough that everything makes sense and it's a change for the better, so I definitely don't mind too much. I think Ronan goes through a lot of character development, but I have to be honest, again, Declan, Jordan and Matthew, their storylines, their developments, the way that they've come to decide the things and do the things that they do in this book I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Some characters that I think are lacking a lot. Farouk Lane is a character that feels like a blank page to me. She really has no sense of personality and she doesn't intrigue me at all. Liliana could have been an interesting character, but we just don't get enough time with her. So even though this book is very much a plot and character driven book, I still think it's the characters that stole the show for me. And it was so nice to learn a bit more about the whole dreaming situation, to have that explained a bit more, but also to just see it in action. It was really well crafted and well done. And Stiefvater sets herself up the very difficult task of trying to explain a certain concept of art, and she does it so beautifully and so magnificently that I was amazed that she tackled such a difficult thing to try and capture in a single book. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I will have another review coming with spoilers with every single thought I had while reading Mr. Impossible, because I took notes. I had a lot to say, I had a lot of thoughts and feelings. And one of them was that a certain character doesn't feature enough, but you know, that's not what this series is about, so it definitely got the full 5 stars from me. Speaking of Maggie Stiefvater, I'm just going to quickly mention here that I read The Raven King, and this was a reread for me. This is the 4th and final book in the Raven Cycle series, and I reread it for my Read It Backwards series, so I'll have a link down below to where you can hear my full, spoiler-full thoughts of this book. I had a wild ride reading this book because there are plenty of things that I did remember. I fell in love with Henry Cheng all over again, and more significantly than ever before. I was shipping certain characters and just having an absolute blast. I love this series. There's always one series that everybody has that is totally their thing, their personality, their heart, and I have to say The Raven Cycle fulfills that for me. Another book I read was A Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and this was a book that I put on pause because I wasn't loving the beginning, but now that I finished the whole book, I can successfully say I really enjoyed this. So in this one, we follow our main character who works at a library with these magical books, but one night everything goes wrong and she gets caught up in a crime case and everybody thinks that she's the culprit. A sorcerer comes who is going to take her to court to be tried, and the storyline goes from there. And I have to say, this book is not perfect. Rogerson's books are rarely perfect, but they're so much fun and they're such a good time that I enjoy them regardless. So I can successfully say that there was a demon in this book called Silas who I was complete trash for. I just love him so much. He's incredibly polite, he does not like physical contact, and sometimes he turns into a cat. Like, what more could you want from a demon character? But in this one I would also say that the romance was quite nice. I would say that the plot was a bit meh. It was an okay plot. It was not too exciting, but it certainly had moments of action. It certainly made sense and things were happening. It just didn't strike me as the most interesting plot in a fantasy standalone I've ever read. But then again, the characters came in and swooped and saved the day for this book because I had so much fun reading about Silas and I had so much fun learning about Nathaniel and the romance that goes on in this book. Our main character was just okay for me, but I kind of like the fact that our main character was the one who was wielding the sword in here. Give a girl a sword and she can do anything. We've got some very typical fantasy scenes, like a ballroom scene, like fighting scenes, and just banter in the romance. Very typical fantasy, middle of the road, but I was here for it nonetheless. So I think with this book, just go in, don't expecting it to be perfect. The beginning is not the most intriguing. It took me a little while to get into the book, but it's just such good fun that I kept reading and kept enjoying it all the way through. After that, I read Saga Volume 4, and this book follows this war going on in outer space, and there's lots of planets in this world, and there's two sides of this war, and a couple form from opposing sides of the war, and they have this child, and everybody wants to kill this child because it's a symbol that actually the two sides could work together and there doesn't have to be a war. But the plot has definitely accelerated from there because we're in volume 4. this is heavy, putting it down, inserting a photo of volume 4's cover. So in this one I really enjoyed it. I think it was a very good balance between character and plot. We've definitely got a lot of things happening plot wise, as lots of action, lots of gore goes on, and it's rising in suspense and tension in a way that's going to make the next volume even more exciting, and I liked seeing that go down. But then we've also got the parents trying to navigate parenting, parents who are trying to navigate their relationship with a child, and that is definitely a struggle as they're both facing different pressures. Some might have to do with employment, and some might have to do with maintaining a relationship while worrying about employment, while worrying about raising your child, and also the fact that everybody is trying to kill the family. And we're also following other characters who have different storylines, but I do always like how the storylines connect and echo each other, and all of these characters have such complex and interweaving relationships to each other, and it's nice seeing the groups shift, or the dynamics shift, as they have to work together or have to work apart. That's all I can tell you without spoiling anything, but I did really enjoy this volume in the series. Speaking of volumes, I also read volumes 1, 2 and 3 of Death Note, and this is a manga that is by Tsugumi, Ohba and Takeshi Obata. So those are the illustrators and the storyline writers, and I've already read volumes 1 and 2 before, so those are rereads, and then I read volume 3 for the very first time. And this manga series is about these gods of death who write in a notebook, and if they write in your name in their notebook, you are going to die. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just how they control death. But one day one of these death gods gets very bored in his universe, and he drops his death note down to earth, where somebody picks it up and decides it's time for him to start meeting justice using this death note. I've watched the entire anime, and I really love it up until the end, and I'm just curious to read the manga all the way through. I was about to do a challenge video for this, but it didn't work out, but I'm still going to continue the series any which way. Volume 1 really does a very good job of setting up the story and setting up the world. You've got to be given a lot of information about the death notes and how they can be used, but all of that is conveyed in a way that does not feel info dumpy at all. It's all very clear and easy to follow, and it starts right in with the psychological game that this series carries all the way through it from book 1, and it does that incredibly well. I love it. I love it to pieces. I love smart characters, and I love I would like to say smart villains, but I feel like things can be a bit more grey area if you want them to be, but I'll just say I love a good smart villain. It's really a battle of the minds in this book, and it does it very well. And then we move on to volume 2, where we get to see my favourite character a whole lot more, and I love getting to see him feature prominently in this story. Again, the psychological game, it steps right up. Manipulation is happening left, right and centre, and things get very high stakes. I do think that this is the one where the female representation starts that's very bad, and I would say that, judging from the anime, this series doesn't have the best female representation, so do be warned of that going in, but it did convey that a little bit in this one, and there was a very suspenseful moment in this book. And then we move on to the third volume, which I'd never read before, and I also really enjoyed. Again, it just adds so much to the table, and I feel like every volume the stakes rise even more. I realised that the villain in this one has become one of my favourite villains, and I just really love him as an evil character. And it's just interesting to see everything go down, and the pieces that come into play here is a very good setup for the fourth volume, which I'm very excited to read. It also introduces my least favourite character, so that's going to be something to contend with when I continue on with the next one. The Foundling by Stacey Halls, and I buddy read this with the lovely Victoria and Mary from Mary Among Stories and What Victoria Read. It was such a joy to buddy read this historical fiction book with them. And this one follows a woman who has a baby, but she doesn't have the means to take care of this baby at the moment, so she hands the baby into the Foundling hospital where the baby grows up, and she returns to claim back her baby once she's able to support the child and take care of the child, but somebody has already come back to claim her child, and she wants to find out who it was and where her child is. So this one was an interesting journey. I liked it, but I just didn't love it as much as I liked The Familiars by this author. I think the thing about this book is that it was a bit rushed in certain places, which didn't work out for me, and I would have liked it if it was a bit longer, if we got shown more things, and if things weren't wrapped up so neatly. So in this one we have two perspectives, and I really liked the two perspectives. I liked the perspective of Alexandra the most. I think she was a very complex character, and I liked the way that she was working through her own trauma, but was also very much aware that everything that she was doing had an impact on somebody else as well. And the mystery of what happened with her child and where the child is, it just went a bit too quick for me and wrapped up too nicely, and I wish that we'd had more time with it and just, I don't know, a bit more from that storyline. It didn't accumulate the way that I wanted it to. But the writing style was absolutely beautiful, and it was a joy to read this one. It was very easy and quick reading. I didn't struggle with it whatsoever. There was a character called Lyle who I really liked. If you've read this book, you know who he is. And I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like this one had agoraphobia and OCD representation in a historical fiction, which I don't get to see that much. It's not really said by name, but you can kind of see some of those tendencies in one of the characters, and I just thought it was good fun. I don't have very heavy or personal feelings towards this one. It's mostly indifference, but it was still a nice read. We're going to end with two more 5 stars. So my next 5-star, my next new favourite goes to Cannibal by Safiya Sinclair, and this one is a poetry collection. It's written by a Jamaican author, and it's poems that have to do with culture, Jamaican culture, but also displacement when you move away from your home. It's got a lot to do with family, relationships to mothers, to fathers, to siblings, and it's also got a lot to do with nature and imagery related to the Caribbean, which was so lovely to see. I actually thought this was just one of the best poetry collections I've read in a very long time. I can't even tell you these were my favourite poems, because no, not a single poem missed. Every single one of these poems was a 5-star poem for me. They were all hits. I read through each and every one and annotated it, because the way that she uses literary devices, the way that she uses half rhyme, the way that she structures her poems, it was all just so very good. I would love to get into this poet's head and find out how she made these beautiful narrative and lyrical poems that all stand on their own, but together just form something that is so magnificent and beautiful. This is truly a masterpiece of a poetry collection, and if you like poetry, I really recommend you read this one. Definitely going to be one of the best books I've read this year. And then last but not least, I also read March Volume 2, which is the sequel to March Volume 1, and these are graphic novels all about John Lewis's life, so it's kind of his memoir in graphic novel form. It's by John Lewis, Andrew Aydin and Nate Powell, and I gave this one 5 stars. It's also another new favourite, just like Volume 1. I like this even more than Volume 1. It continues on the story that we've had before, so it's the inauguration of Barack Obama, but we're getting flashbacks into John Lewis's life, about the work that he did in the civil rights movement. And just like before, he also makes sure to show how the civil rights movement was not only prominent people making a big difference, but also was a lot of people working together and making that difference, a whole community effort. The things that happen in here are devastating, are heartbreaking, but it's all true. This happened to people. This were people's struggles as they tried to fight for their rights. This one focuses a lot on the Freedom Rides, as you can see from the bus on the cover, so it talks in detail about how the Freedom Ride started, what his role was within that, but it also just talks about the way the community stepped up and did a lot of different things as well. The artwork, as I've said before, is in black and white, which is just another way that I feel like it adds to the whole racism issue, and again, it also shows how there were white people who were fighting for their rights alongside them. Racism is not black versus white, it's racist versus anti-racist. I don't think there's much more that I can say, but I do really recommend this graphic novel collection. Those are all of the books that I read this month. Apart from A Little Life, I actually had a very good month where I really enjoyed nearly everything that I read. Please let me know in the comment section down below what was your favourite read in the month of June, or have you read any of these books? Share your thoughts. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!